Yes.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, guys, 1 second. Okay, if you guys can mute yourself, that'll be better. And okay. Okay, good. So today we're going to talk about Apex-based sharing. So what is Apex-based sharing? So before we jump into the examples, let's first understand why do we have Apex sharing. So whenever you need any kind of granular access, okay, when I say granular access means it is not a straightforward access that you can give. For example, there are a couple of scenarios where, let's say, a case needs to be of a case which has a priority, second case which has a priority. Not sure what's going on over here. Okay. A case which has a priority and then it also needs to check couple more conditions, you need to share it with a queue. So those kind of conditional access, you cannot do it through the regular sharing rule. So if you remember in admin portion, you have sharing based on OWD, that is the base level access. So according to OWD, if it is private, people who have created the records, only they will be able to see the records. Or so OWD can be of either public type, can be private, or can be public read. Okay. So if it is private, what is the meaning of that? Anybody? Not sure what's going on.
Just the owners can see the.
Yeah, so people who created those will be the one. Public read means they will be able to see every record that exists, but they will only have read access on it. And public read write means they will be able to edit as well. Okay. So then after the OWD, it was a very basic level of access. Then to open up the access, you had role hierarchy, right? So through role hierarchy, you opened up the access, but the role hierarchy opens up the access from within in the based on the role. So somebody who is the manager will be able to see the records of an individual who belongs or reports to him. Okay, so it works in the role hierarchy. So so a manager will be able to see its team members' records. So, but when it comes to sharing records from one team with another team, then there was a concept of manual sharing or sharing rules where you open up the access of records owned by this team with the with another team. So these were the different ways of doing it. Now there could be certain level of access that you need based on certain conditions, and those conditions might be available in a separate object. So let's say account records needs to be shared based upon entitlements or who owns those account records, what is the type of the account, and some of that information lies in a separate object. So first you read through that object and then you figure out, okay, this needs this kind of permission. So when it comes to giving a granular access based on certain conditions, in those cases, you will go ahead and use apex sharing. Okay, so in those scenarios, you're going to use, not sure what happened to my pen today. Um, One second. Okay. So in the case of apex sharing, it is very simple. So what happens is every object in Salesforce has a corresponding shared object. Okay. So if you're talking about account, there is an account share object. Jeez. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm not sure what's going on. Okay. Okay. So there is an account share object corresponding to every object. So if there's an opportunity, then you have the opportunity share. So this object is something that you will use in order to give access to the records. And so you will create a manual entry, or through the Apex, you will create an entry into this table. And this table will give you access to individual records to a particular user. It could be a public group, it could be to the manager, it could be any of those. Okay. And you can set up some conditions as well that give access only to this particular group based on these conditions. So that is what Apex sharing is. So first of all, let's go ahead and understand what Apex sharing is one more time. So sharing defines who can see which records. Salesforce, as I mentioned, security is built in three different ways. One is object level security, which basically is controlled by profiles and permission sets. Then you have is the field level security, which is also controlled by profiles and permission sets. And after that, you have record level security, right? Which records needs access. And then it is a combination of OWD, role hierarchy, sharing rules. And then finally, you have something called as Apex sharing. Now, in the Apex sharing, you can control based on a given condition. So for example, the OWD is the basic level of access. So first we will set up that basic level of access, and then we will go ahead and then we will go ahead and provide the access either based on something is off, guys. It keeps shaking. Okay, so you have OWD, the baseline access, then you open up the access through the role hierarchy. Then after the role hierarchy, you have sharing rules, and then you have Apex sharing. And then there is two keywords that we will learn today, with sharing and without sharing. Okay, so with sharing, it enforces the sharing rule. So whatever sharing you have, it will enforce it while running the code. And if you want them to run it in the system context and you want it to ignore all the sharing rules, then you will go ahead and do without sharing. Okay. Inherited sharing, basically the classes will inherit their sharing from the parent class or from the calling class. That is inherited sharing. So we have different ways. So in this tutorial, we are going to talk about the the Apex based sharing. So what is Apex-based sharing? Apex-based sharing is when sharing rule doesn't support conditional queue sharing, right? Like if you, for example, the scenarios are, I'm not doing anything and this is moving. Okay. First of all, any questions up till this point, guys? Or you want me to repeat anything?
So it's kind of in the hierarchy, right? When it starts an OWD, um, that's actually the way that we control the sharing in Apex. Is that correct to say?
First, we will start with OWD, correct? We will start with OWD where we will set up the hierarchy based on, like, we will make it private. Now, after making it private, nobody will be able to see the records. Then what we're going to do is we are going to do the Apex. Then you have other ways, role hierarchy and all that. We're not going to talk about those. We're going to talk about Apex sharing, where we will, through Apex classes, we will give granular access to some records. Okay?
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
and then why do you want to do that, or in which conditions where will you use it? So, for example, if there is a territory based or geographically based access, okay, and it is dynamically, so people get change and then it keeps on changing. So, you can't have a set of sharing rules that will take care of this situation. So let's say the business need is a company wants account access based on a representative's postal code, country, or region, but the list of who covers which region changes frequently and it is stored in a separate object. So let's say there is a separate object which stores all this information. So if you want to give access to account record based on another table, you first have to read the table, and then from there you compute what kind of access do I need to give to an individual account record. So a situation like this, your sharing won't work, your role hierarchy won't work, your manual sharing won't work. So nothing is going to work. So then you will have Apex based sharing. Okay. So because sharing rules cannot reference the custom objects, right? So like custom, like another object, and then reading from that. So all of that you cannot do through your out of the box sharing capabilities. So that is when you're going to use a sharing rules. Or for example, if you want to share records based on multiple conditions with a queue. For example, a case that needs to be shared with a different queue, let's say special escalation queue, based on these conditions. The priority is high, or customer tier is gold, and customer type is outage. Now all three condition needs to meet and you want to share it with a queue. So you cannot do that through your sharing rule. So in those cases, you will use Apex sharing. So whenever your out of the box doesn't come or doesn't suit, that's when you're going to create is the Apex based sharing. And manual sharing isn't scalable. Sharing rules do not support conditional queue sharing. So if you wanted to give access, so let's say if I go ahead and go over to a sharing settings, and if I want to create case sharing rules, and if I click on new, you can put conditions, right? You can go ahead and put a condition on case record saying this, but you cannot do shared with a queue. You can only do it with public groups, roles, and internal subordinates. You cannot have a queue in here. Okay. So for these kind of situations, when your out of the box doesn't take care, then you will use is the Apex sharing. Now, every real object, how do you share? Every real object will have a share object. Account will have an object called account share. Contact will have an object called contact share. Similarly, if there is a custom object, it will have a project underscore underscore share would be its custom object share. Okay. So here, let me show you, this is how the account share object looks like. So I'm querying these fields from the account share. Okay. ID of the account, what kind of access level that account has with this group or the user. Okay. So if this user has all kind of access onto this onto this record. Okay. Some of them don't have all access. So if you scroll down, you will see certain users, like this user only has a read access. In this user, John Inventory, has a read access on this record. So account share will know which all records have what kind of access with those users or groups. Okay. So if you remove the entry, that sharing will be gone for that user or group. So this is an account share. Similarly, You will have a case share, opportunity share, any object that you have, let's say shoe order. So shoe order will have, sorry, shoe inventory. Shoe inventory will have shoe inventory underscore underscore share. So that will give you all the information related to the custom objects sharing, like who has access to what. So now, if you wanted to, first of all, what are we going to do here is whenever you have to give access through this Apex sharing, you have to first tell what is the record you want to share, with whom you want to share, and what is the access level. Is it read access or edit? So through Apex sharing, you can only give read access or edit access. You cannot give delete or transfer or any of those other access. Those you have to do it through the manual sharing or the regular sharing, but only two type of access you can give the uh, through the Apex sharing is either read or edit access. Okay, and then you have to set what is the reason for giving the Apex sharing. And most of the time you will either use manual is the reason why the sharing exists. Okay, so these are certain fields you have to set up onto that particular object in order to access that record with a particular user. Okay, so let's do an example to understand before we jump our things. Now, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and create a trigger. Now, what is a trigger? Today, we are going to do very basic on the trigger, and then we will have a separate lecture on to the trigger. So trigger is something, it is like an Apex class. Okay, trigger is no different than an Apex class, but trigger gets executed whenever an event happens. And Apex class you do is you invoke it, right? You either call it from anonymous window, or you call it through another class. You instantiate the object of the class, then you call the method of the class. This is how you call a class, right? Trigger is something you don't call them explicitly. They get triggered, they get executed automatically based upon what type of trigger it is. So if you have created a trigger on account object, and you are saying that, okay, this trigger should fire after insert. So what's going to happen is anytime any account record gets inserted, this trigger code will get executed. Okay. So trigger doesn't have a method in it. Basically, this is how you write a trigger. You use the keyword trigger, just like you have to give a name to the class, you have to give the name to the trigger. Okay. And you have to specify on which object the trigger is. Is it on account? Is it on opportunity? Is it on lead? So you will specify the object. And then you will specify what are the events on which this trigger will be fired. Okay. So I have specified the event as after insert. That means whenever an account record is being inserted, this code will automatically get executed. You don't have to call it from anywhere. Moment the account gets inserted, this trigger will get fired. Or if let's say I had the event as before insert. So before that trigger, before that record gets saved to the database, the trigger will get fired. Okay. So you can specify the different events on which the trigger will fire. So any questions on a trigger? What is a trigger?
So in a nutshell, trigger is like an anonymous window. We want to just
So trigger is automation, right?
Trigger is automation. Like it will,
Like,
you are not invoking it any through any method or anything. Basically, whenever that event happens, event could be a record creation, a record deletion, or a record update happening, or any of these things happen, that trigger will get fired automatically. Okay?
so like flows and work process
Yes,
builders,
like
they
a
are
record trigger
like
flow. Like you
yeah,
have record trigger flow, right?
they
That
are
gets
like
so trigger is all similar to a record trigger flow, right? So it's like whenever the record gets updated or inserted, that flow gets executed. Similarly, when the record gets inserted or updated, the trigger is the one that gets executed.
also the share account. So this is automatically created by the Salesforce, right?
Yes, by Salesforce. Yeah. So every object has a share object also.
So, Deepika, since the triggers doesn't need any invocation like invoke method or anything,
Yeah.
So in an org, there could be many triggers saying after insert do this, right? So it triggers one
Ideally,
by one, or like how
no.
is
So
it?
ideally, you should have one trigger per object. Okay. Otherwise, it can cause a lot of harm to your org when you have multiple triggers per object. You should, as a framework or as a good practice, is to have one trigger per object. And whatever you want to do, and you never write any much code inside of your trigger. Okay, you will use a trigger framework. Okay, you will have helper classes, so you will give your the main logic will be written in helper classes and all that, but usually you will have one trigger per object and you will define the events in there, which which thing to call in what event, you will specify all of that. So your question is, first of all, you should only have one trigger per object. And then depending upon what happened, let's say a lead got inserted, then the trigger related to the lead will be fired. Now, if a lead is doing something on the account, then if there is a trigger on the account, then that will get fired. Are you getting my point?
Yeah. But
Okay.
for the same object itself, we can have like after insert, before
Yes.
insert, and
Yes.
so then it will be like multiple triggers for same object with different
No,
events.
trigger is no.
So,
Trigger will be
Deepika,
one.
let me rephrase her question. So, her question probably would be like, if we have a flow that perform the same function, if we have a trigger that perform the same function, so which one trigger, like which one perform the action
Okay,
first?
so that will be dependent upon your order of execution. And we will take a look at what the order of execution is, what will get fired based on what. I believe her question was, she thinks every event you are going to create a trigger. No, you can have a comma separated list of events. So after insert, you can have it, after delete, you can have it. So the same trigger will get fired on all those events. Okay, then inside of that trigger you can say, hey, if this is an after insert trigger, do this. If this is a before insert trigger, do this. So then you can have different business logic for different events that is happening, but you can specify a comma separated list of events as well, so you don't have to create multiple triggers for every event. Hema, is that what your question was?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
So
got
you
it.
don't create multiple triggers. You basically you say that, okay, this is one trigger which is getting fired on after insert, after update, after delete, after undelete, all of that. Okay. And then I think in the weekend class, we are going to learn about triggers this weekend. So we will see that. But let's say this trigger is getting fired on after insert. Okay. And what this trigger is doing, so let's say our access, we do have only, if I go here to the account sharing settings, so the account sharing setting is private. So if you go above, you can see here the account and contract has the OWD set to private. Now, what does that mean? It means that the records don't have access, like if the users don't have access to the records if they are not the owner. So if I go over here and if you go to the user records, and currently, let me go ahead and first take care of the triggers. I believe I did created some triggers. I'm gonna delete this trigger, delete this too. Otherwise, I believe those triggers were existing ones, and then that's the one causing the issue. Okay, so let me get rid of the triggers. And then I'm gonna go to the user record. And inside of the user record, let's say we log in as this user, Ramesh. Okay, so if you log in as this user, currently he has access to how many records? Let's see. He has access to about 3 records. Okay. Now, if I log out as Ramesh and log in back again, as my org. Not sure why I have to keep doing this. But if I log in here, and if you create an account record, so let's go ahead and create an account. And let's see if this newly created account, Ramesh gets access to it or not. Okay, so let's say we created dummy account and we will hit save and then we will log in. So we'll go to the setup and we will go over to the, let me get rid of this thing. Okay, so over here, if I go to the users, and now if I log in as Ramesh, Ramesh shouldn't see dummy records. Okay, the dummy record, that account that we just created, he should still see those 3 records. And you can see here, he is not able to see the one that we just created. Okay, so now what I'll do is I will give the access to this whenever you create an account record. And if it meets a certain condition, you want to give the access to Ramesh. Okay, so what are we doing is we will create a trigger. So first of all, we'll go to the developer console. And over here, we will go to File, close all, File, New, and we will create a trigger here. So you have to specify what is the name of the trigger. So this is the name of the trigger. And then you will specify on which object the trigger is. So the trigger is on account object, and that's it. Moment you do that, automatically a trigger gets created. This is the name of the trigger, and on which object the trigger is, that is there. And then it thought it is on before insert, but let's say it's on after insert. After insert means once the record is inserted. Okay, before is before the record is inserted, this trigger will get fired. This trigger is going to get fired only when the record has been inserted. Now
trigger can perform the DML function as well, right?
Oh yes, trigger.
Okay.
But mostly you don't write too much code inside of a trigger. Okay, so what this trigger is doing, it is basically giving me, first it is retrieving the user record. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get that user record. So if I go here, setup, go here, setup, and let's go ahead and get this person's username. So this is the person's username. And we will go here, we will retrieve that person. So we will retrieve that user record. And then what we are doing, we have created a list of the account share. So anytime you do an insert on the account share, you will see that particular record is being inserted. So we created an empty list here. Then we are iterating over each of those accounts that we just created. So trigger.new is a variable that is given to you by Apex. It is called as context variables. So trigger.new will basically tell you what all records just got inserted. Okay, so they will have every record that got inserted. And then what you're doing is you're iterating over those newly inserted records. Okay, and then you are creating an object of account share. You're creating the object, and on the account share, you're setting up which account you want to give access to. So you're setting up the account ID. With which user do you want to give the access? So vp.id. And account access level, what kind of access do you want to give? Do you want to give a read access or an edit access? Okay. And then what is the reason for the access? So there are different reasons that you can say. Now, if you wanted to see what are all different reasons are, you can just go to the developer console and it will tell you what all reasons can be there with account share. Okay, so if you see here, there are, I believe, 4 options. Row cause. Okay, so it's a pick list. It can have manual. No, there are multiple. Manual, owner, team, etc. But majority of the time, the row cause, you will set it up as manual. Okay, so these are the valid values this row cause can have. But for our example, we are just setting up the row cause to have a value of manual. Okay, now account also.
So will it impact anything means if we create
No, it
different
is just
features?
the reason. What on it is just going to be what is the reason for this
Like a
sharing.
description?
That's not a description, but they have created these different pick list values depending upon um, different. I haven't gone through the too much detail on it, but you can read through it. It tells you guest parent implicit. The guest user has access because they have access to records related to the account, such as all. So depending upon, yeah. So this is like a short description for these reasons. It doesn't affect anything. It doesn't affect your ownership or anything. It just gives you the reason for that sharing. So then is the opportunity access level, because see, account object record also controls opportunities and case level. So we have set up that, okay, any opportunities that are tied to this account, you will have read access on those. And any cases that are tied to this account will also have read access. So these are some extra things you will have to do. If I don't give opportunity access level, the code will fail. Okay, so you always have to provide opportunity access level. And then you are basically create this list that you have created, you're adding this newly created account share record into this, and then you're doing an insert. The moment you do an insert, and this insert would be, okay, this is the account and I'm sharing this account with this user record, automatically that user record will get access to the this newly created account record. Any questions?
Yes, so this opportunity access and case label, right? So on what basis do we give these access? So let's say there could be multiple objects related to accounts, right? So do we
Multiple
need to give
opportunities.
no, not opportunity. So opportunities is linked to account, right? Somehow,
Yeah,
or case is
yeah,
linked to account, right? So
yeah,
the similar way, there could be other objects that are linked to accounts. So that could be our custom objects and some
yeah.
other objects also, right? So do we need to give access to each and
No,
everything, or
no.
these two are the mandatory?
These two are the only one you have to give, not to the custom objects that you have. Okay?
Okay, and how do we know that that only these two will have to we have to
Because
give?
if you see here, if you go to the account share, you will
Yeah.
see what are all the required field values. Okay? So wait a minute. See here, this field must be set to access level that at least equal to organization default opportunity access level. Set to, you can't use the API to update this field. Yeah, so you have to up give this opportunity access level. Otherwise, you're going to get a trigger, you're going to get an exception. So this is a required one based upon this class logic. Okay?
So Deepika, so you are opening the like you're
Developer org.
sharing, yeah, you're sharing the access, right?
Yeah, I'm
So what
sharing. Yeah.
what the user already have the access? You know,
We
you
just saw we didn't have the access.
okay. What in case of some of the user has access of some of the like he has access to the account, not the opportunity. You still provide the access here?
Yeah, yeah. Opportunity access level you have to provide.
Even for the account? I mean, he
Yeah.
already has the access. So even though he already has access to you, it still be providing here?
Yes, because this is a required thing you have to do when you are creating an instance of account share. Okay, even if that, for example, that record already had access, then you, first of all, you don't need Apex sharing. But in case that by mistake you had it, you still need to provide opportunity access level. Okay, what else? What other questions?
I had a question. This, I mean, all these records are being inputted. These sharing rules is only for if you're going through Apex or you're going through a flow. It doesn't affect, let's say, if somebody loaded counts through data loader or something like that.
Okay, so
Or,
let's say they loaded accounts through data loader. Now, if you can bypass triggers, if you do something like that, but if you're not bypass triggers, this code will get executed. So that
okay.
access will be given. So trigger doesn't matter. You are inserting records manually, or you're inserting records through data loader, or you're using data import wizard to insert. This trigger will get fired no matter what. But if you have a flag which says, hey, because bypass or don't run triggers after the data loader, then this trigger won't get executed. But otherwise, if those flags are not there, this trigger will get executed for each record that you have in the data loader.
Okay, not unless you turn those flags off.
Yes,
Okay.
unless you
All
turn
right.
those flags off.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
now, yeah.
we can do this via flow as well, right? The same logic.
Yes, you can insert the record, the same account share via a flow also.
Okay. The last question which I have is, so there is a the flow runs once the record is created or updated, right?
Yeah.
But here after insert, so let's say I have a trigger and flow on both the things, right, on the same object, and those are doing the two multiple jobs. So how do I ensure which will after insert or on record create? So which one get executed first?
Okay. So
You
that
got the
one
question, right?
depends upon the order of your execution. I don't know if it's flows get executed or if it's the that if I have a trigger and flow on record create, which will execute first? Is that what your question is?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it has to be through a say order of execution. If you have a before flow and a before trigger, the flow usually goes first. If you have an after flow and after trigger, the trigger runs first. So it depends upon what type of flow it is. Okay, so this is your answer. Before trigger will run, the before save flow will run before the before trigger. In the case of after, the after will run first, the trigger will run first, and then the flow will run. Okay, that depends on order of execution. And there is a full list of order of execution that which will get executed first. And that you always have to remember.
Okay.
Okay, but you can see here if it is a before trigger and if there is a before flow, then before flow will get executed before the trigger. And if there is an after flow and after trigger, then the after trigger will get executed and then the after flow.
Okay. And this list is available, right, in Salesforce
Yes.
documentation?
Oh,
Okay.
yes. This is
Yeah.
there, save order of execution. So here you
Yeah,
will,
there are 22 of them.
yeah,
22.
yes, here. It's a pretty good validation rules and all that. This is all is your
Yeah, I think there are 22 when I
yeah, this is your order of execution. Yeah. Okay. So this is pretty much, you have to remember most of it, but there are certain ways to certain things that you need to remember and certain things you can easily figure it out. We will talk about order of execution when we talk about triggers. So now, as I mentioned to you earlier, any questions before I go? Okay, so this is the account share record that you created and you are inserting that record. So currently, if I go to the account share, I haven't created. So how many, I'll go to the account share, sorry, account share, run export. Okay. So you have total of 153 records. Now, after you create a user record, you will see that that record will automatically get shared with Ramesh, and you will see records being inserted into this table. So if I go to the account record and we'll click on new account record, and let's say we call it as Ramesh share account. Okay. And then we hit save here. Now this record, even though it's created by me, if I log in and if I go here to the data export, you will see two records got inserted into this one, into this table where account ID, we can say account ID equals to let's get the ID of that record that we just created. We go here, account. Ramesh share account, you will go here, Control C, and then we will put it in here. Okay, so you can see here, one, it is being shared with Ramesh. If I remove this entry, Ramesh will no longer have access to the record anymore. And I have one record shared with Deepika, that's me because I'm the owner, and it is shared with Ramesh. So whoever has access to it, individual entry will be created for those users. Okay, so now if I log in, and if I log in as Ramesh, you will see that this Ramesh now has access to 4 opportunities, and this Ramesh share account is because we created the instance of account share, we inserted that account share, and through that account share, we gave a read access. Now, he only has read access. Now, if he tries to do anything over here, then he doesn't have edit, so you will get an error message. But if you give it an edit access, then he'll be able to change it. Okay? Any questions, guys? Okay. Now, let's say you wanted to give access. So it is pretty similar. Now, let's say you have an opportunity record. Okay. And the opportunity record, you want to share it with the manager of the owner of the record. Okay. So let's say when a new opportunity is created, the manager of the owner should automatically get access. Now, this you can do it through role hierarchy, but I will show you if you have to give access to a manager, how will you do it? So on a user object, there is a field called manager. Okay, so if you go here to the user and let's go over to the user and you will see Ramesh has a manager. So if I go to the manager, look for manager here, you will see there is John is his manager. Okay. So we don't have any role hierarchy or anything like that right now set up. So if Ramesh creates a record, John will not be able to see the record. So if I log in as John, first we will log in as Ramesh. So we'll go here, we will log in as Ramesh. And we will create a account record. And here we will create a new account record, Ramesh record 1. Okay, we will hit save here. Okay, what happened? Oh, account sharing trigger line 19. Okay. What happened here? Line number 19. So let's first insert a record. And let's say we inserted. Let's save. And we are getting a cross-referenced ID, line number 19, column 1. So if I log out and log in back again. Oh, I was doing an account. Okay, let me see. I was supposed to do it on the opportunity, but let's see what the error is. Developer console. Usually you get that error message when you're referencing an ID which doesn't exist. Account sharing trigger. And when you're trying to do an insert, oh, on account. So it basically giving you an error. Because you're trying to share it with the, because we do have a trigger already on the account object. And that trigger is being fired. And when you're doing an insert on this shares, that is when this is complaining. And you're giving access to this record. I have to debug why the error happened, because we are trying to insert. And this is where the error is happening. Okay, I'll have to debug this, but let's do it on the opportunity. What I was saying, let's say we have an opportunity created by Ramesh. John automatically won't get access to it, even though, because we don't have role hierarchy set up. So what I'll do here is I'm going to go ahead and create the, so if I go and log in as Ramesh, so first we will log in as Ramesh, and we will create an opportunity record. So user detail and log in. And over here, we will go to the opportunities, and Ramesh is creating an opportunity. Okay, so we will go ahead and create an opportunity 1 and close date 23, hit save. Stage is qualification and hit save. Okay, now if you log out as Ramesh and log in as your John won't be able to see this opportunity. Let's see. First of all, we need to see what is the OWD on the opportunities before I even do that. Let's go here to the sharing settings, and we will go over to the opportunities. Okay, it is private, so we are good. So it is also private. So now if I log in as John Inventory Manager, if I log in and go over to the opportunities, you will see John won't have access to the one that we just created. We created an opportunity 1, right? So he doesn't have access. So what we will do here is we will go ahead and create a trigger and a trigger handler. Okay. So we will go to the opportunity sharing service, and we will share it with the manager, and then from the trigger, we will call our opportunity sharing service. Okay. So first I'm going to go ahead and click on login here. So we'll write the code for the class. So here we have developer console, file, new Apex class, opportunity sharing service 1. And over here, you will go ahead and create this. So over here, this is what we are giving. So here you don't have to, opportunity access level that you want to give is edit. The cause is manual. With whom you are sharing it, you're sharing it with the manager. Okay, who's manager? Basically, whoever is the owner, that person's manager is the one who will get the access. So if I'm creating it, my manager will get it. If Ramesh is creating it, Ramesh manager is John, he will get the access. So here we provided the manager ID, and then what kind of access he will have? He will have edit access. And for which record? So this is the opportunity record on which he will have the access. And then we are doing a simple insert operations. And that insert operation is the one that will insert the records into the opportunity share. So right now, if you read the opportunity share, you will see there are certain records in the opportunity table. So if you go here to the data export, and we will do the, not this one, so it will be opportunity access level, and from opportunity share, and these are all the objects that it has. I will run this. What happened here? Data export. Okay. So right now it have 52 records. Now, what I'll do is I have created the opportunity share service. So in the real world, trigger should not have any logic. All the logic should go to your handler classes. So everything is done by this method. So now I'm creating a trigger which basically calls this class method, And this is my trigger name, opportunity sharing trigger. So we'll go here, file, new, and Apex trigger. The name of the trigger is this one. And this is on which object? It is on opportunity. So from here, select the opportunity object. So it is somewhere right here. That is opportunity. So it will create the trigger and we will say after insert. And what this trigger is doing, it's pretty much iterating over the newly created opportunities. And for every opportunity, it is calling the opportunity sharing service. And inside of this, we are creating the opportunity share record and inserting it into the database. And through that, automatically the record gets shared with the manager. Okay, so now we have 52 records. So now if user logs in as Ramesh and he creates an opportunity, now John will be able to see that opportunity because through this trigger, we are giving the access to the manager. So we will log in as Ramesh. And then here we will go to the opportunities, click on new, and opportunity 2. Close date is this. Stage is needs analysis. Hit save. And now you log out as Ramesh. And then here you log in back again as this user. And then we will log in as John. So now if you go to John Inventory Manager, user detail, and if you log in as this user, you will see that this opportunity record that we just created, opportunity 2, John has access to it, but who is the owner? The owner is still Ramesh, and he has edit access. You can see here Ramesh is the owner, but this access he got is through the sharing role. Okay? Any questions on this one? And he will be able to edit anything because we gave an edit access to him. So now he's able to edit it. But if we would have given a read access, he will only be able to read the record. So this is about the Apex sharing. Any questions?
If let's say it's already set up in organizational-wide defaults or the sharing rules that the manager already sees all the records,
then you don't have to do this.
Then you don't have to go through that step.
No.
Because it would automatically do it once the account gets loaded.
Yeah.
Okay. It's only if it doesn't have that
Yeah.
sharing rule. Okay.
Now, guys, I have one. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Deepa. So as of now, we are sharing with one user, right? So
Yeah.
can we share with
Share
group
with the
of
public
users?
group. Yes, you can.
Okay.
So very simple. You will create a public group first. Okay, so you will go ahead and create a public group. And then similarly, I do have an example for that also. But you will create a public group and you will just query from the group ID. And then you will, instead of putting it as in the case of user or group ID, you will put the group ID in there. So far, we've been just putting it with the user ID. Here, you will put the group ID that you retrieved in this query. Do you want me to do this example or you figured it out?
No, that's okay. I think
Okay.
only
Yeah.
the value part is changing. So fine.
Yeah, only this part is changing. Everything else is the same.
So, Deepika, triggers can perform so many different functional, right? So one of the function is a sharing trigger, sharing. So this is a particular specific sharing.
No. See, you didn't have to create. See, you could have the reason. So, okay, you're getting confused. The logic trigger is basically to call some code when a record is either inserted, deleted, or anything. Now, generally, you want to give access to a record as soon as the record is created. So yes, you will use a trigger, but the logic of sharing is inside of your another class, which is being called through your trigger. Are you getting my point?
No, can you explain it again, please?
Okay. So for example, yes, so the sharing of the record should happen as soon as a record is being created, right? Or but the reason I created a trigger is because I want a logic to get executed as soon as a record is inserted. What logic it is, it depends on you. Right now, I've written an apex sharing and I'm giving the
So
access.
logic is carried out by the classes or whatever we write
Oh, yeah,
in the
but
yeah. Okay, but
the
the
trigger is,
sharing would be the trigger. Okay.
no, the trigger is just the logic that is being executed the moment a record is created, inserted, deleted, or whatever it is. What logic you want to do it? One logic is I'm giving an apex sharing, but you can have other logics also in the trigger. Are you getting my point? Or did I
So
confuse you more?
no, so this is just for the sharing logic in the trigger. So you can
Yeah.
add multiple logics as well
Yeah, but
in the trigger.
usually you don't put too much code inside of a trigger. Trigger is just we usually have a trigger framework, and the framework will put the entire logic in the helper classes and all of that. Trigger is just to call those helper classes. That's it. Trigger will not have any logic. Trigger will just have, okay, transfer the execution from here to this method, to this method, or to this method. That's all trigger logic would be. Trigger will not be as big as that you see here. That's never a trigger code. All the code you will write in the helper classes, but those class will be invoked through a trigger framework.
Trigger. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now, guys, there's one last thing called with sharing and without sharing. And this is the assignment I would like you to do. So with sharing, basically, when you can use it with a class, okay? Now, when you use it with, I cannot demonstrate it because the problem is I need to create a flow and call that, but I will tell you what the assignment is. So with sharing, you see here, with sharing, basically, if you have enforced a class with this keyword, this query will only return records you have access to. Okay? So if there were 100 opportunity records, but as a user, you only have access to 10 records, you're only going to see those 10 records because with sharing, what kind of access the user has, those things will be taken into consideration. When you use class without sharing, that means your access level doesn't matter. It runs in the system context, means you will see 100 records, I will see 100 records, another person is going to see 100 records. So that is the difference between with sharing and without sharing. Okay? So this query with sharing will return a different result for a different user if he doesn't have access to those records. So let's say your opportunity OWD is private. And if Ramesh logs in, he only sees 4 opportunities. If John logs in, he only sees 2 opportunities. If Deepika logs in, she sees all the opportunities. That is because if you enforce with sharing with your class. So every method will be taking into every query that you're going to have will be based upon what sharing access you have it. Okay? And without sharing, everybody will get the same access. Now, the assignment for tomorrow is, I'm giving you right now, the assignment is you will create a flow, okay? And that flow basically is a screen flow, which all it does, it displays a list of opportunities, okay? That flow will call this class. One time you will write with sharing with the class, another time you will see without sharing. And you will see one time when you run the flow, it gives you 10 opportunities when one user logs in. If another user logs in, you see 100 opportunities because that user has access to 100. I want you to know how to call an Apex class from a flow. And the flow is going to, the Apex class is returning records, how to display those records via the screen flow. These are the 2 things you have to learn because majority of it is admin part, but you need to know how to invoke a flow, how to invoke an Apex class from a flow. Did you understand the ask here?
And you want to show the result in the flow too, right?
Yes. The result, see, the flow is a screen flow, which will show you access to what opportunities you have. Behind the scene, that flow is calling an Apex class. That Apex class is the one that is returning the opportunity records. Okay. One time you will mark that class with sharing, and the other time you will run the class as without sharing. And I want somebody tomorrow to show this entire thing. Maybe Monday, because Monday we are going to be doing it. So Monday, show it to the whole end-to-end thing that I'm asking. From the flow, you are invoking the Apex class, displaying the results in the flow. One time the Apex class is running with sharing, and the other time the Apex class is running with without sharing. So when it is running with sharing, if Ramesh logs in, he only sees 4 opportunity records. If John logs in, he or sees as 2 opportunity records. I log in, I see 100 opportunity records. That's what I want to demo. Okay?
Okay.
Everybody understood the assignment?
So you're gonna have 2 flows.
Just one flow. Why 2 flow? Yeah, you can create 2 flow, one for which, but
Sharing.
you can do 1 flow.
Okay. One flow with 2 classes like sharing and without sharing.
Why don't we do this? Okay, let's do this. Create a screen flow. First screen would be, how do you want to run let's ask the user, do you want to run it with sharing or without sharing? Okay. A user selects without sharing. If user selects without sharing, then you invoke the without sharing class. If the user selects with sharing, then you invoke the with sharing class. So you will have a decision element there. Both of them are returning list of opportunities. If you want to do it 2 flows, I'm fine with that, but you can do it in 1 flow also, invoking different classes based on the user input. Hema, did you get it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So based on the user input, you first ask, hey, how do you want to run your Apex? With sharing or without sharing? If the user selects with sharing, call the class with the with sharing keyword. If the user selects without sharing, call the class with without sharing. If that looks too complex, create 2 separate flows. I want somebody to give a demo on Monday.
Sounds good.
Okay, guys, I'll talk to you on Monday then.
See you. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Yeah.